Hello, everyone. This is the third session from Room 1 of International E-Commerce Day. Welcome for the ones we've just attended, and welcome back for the ones that just saw the presentation from Johan. I'm Valentin. I'm going to be your host continuously. I'm here to thank our partners, GetResponse, and of course my great team, which is doing an awesome job. Remember that we have a live chat where you can ask questions, and after this session we're going to have 10 minutes for Q&A. I'm here with Elie, which is from Upra. Upra is a great company that I'm admiring. Me and my product manager actually have just told Elie that thing. He's going to speak to us about how to use big data and insights. So mainly, without further ado, Elie, the stage is yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Valentin. So what I would like to talk about today is basically the recent evolution of how we use and collect data in businesses. There's been a lot of BS around data. Companies talk a lot about being data-driven, but what does that actually mean? Most companies are all about collecting more and more data because they look at this as value and an asset for the company, but without having a clear understanding on how they're going to manage it or use it. So let's dive right into the problem. In the last 10 years, as you guys know, we've had this explosion of cloud services. They became very popular, and companies started to use more tools to engage their customers in unique and competitive ways. So if you are running a typical e-commerce store, think about the tools you use. You may probably be advertising. You have a help desk system, some discussion tools on the website, chat, support, payment systems, and the list goes on. And we found that on average, a business is using at least 15 tools to engage their customers. And those tools are, of course, distributed among teams from marketing to growth, all the way to customer success. And, it became very easy to start or subscribe to one of those simple plug-and-play services and start experimenting with different ways to reach out to the customers to ultimately build brand loyalty and boost sales. Now, this is amazing, of course. It used to take us months, if not years, to build a product that enables these levels of engagements. But that has created actually a new problem. Why is this a problem? You probably think that, by using all these tools, they are taking care of the data collection for you, so you don't have to worry about it. And each of them has some sort of analytics dashboard or product built into it. And you'll find yourself juggling back and forth between all these tools to get your results. So one may ask, or one may say, why don't we bring all these dashboards together and enter business intelligence? For those who don't know what business intelligence is, it's basically some kind of a master dashboard that basically allows you to bring all these charts from all the tools that you are using into one big screen. And when you build a screen like this, users of those tools tend to be so proud of themselves and sitting behind all these dashboards and thinking how data-driven they are. Now, the problem is that those users are only seeing small chunks of the whole customer journey, or small chunks of what's actually happening with the customer. For example, if you are a customer service manager and you found that 95% of your customers are satisfied, and that's up by 10% from the previous month. And on the other hand, you see that sales grew by 20%. Now, is that in fact proof that better customer service has generated 20% increase in revenue? The problem is that we start finding correlations by making assumptions around the data, and that's not very data-driven, is it? Or here's another scenario. Let's say your product team launches a feature to show videos of every product you're selling on the website, and then a week later you see a boost in the revenue. Now, your video analytics tool is showing you that you have probably 5,000 views, and your sales dashboard showing you that your sales are up by 10%. Is that in fact proof that this feature of those videos launched, that it has boosted the revenue by 10%? We tend to look at those two charts, one of the videos viewed and another one for sales. And in the same time, during that same week, a new product line could have been launched and marketing teams may have started a new campaign. Who do we attribute this growth to? Now, the problem is then, although we have all these dashboards clearly in front of us, and we call them business intelligence, all these charts are completely unrelated to each other. And we can rely only on assumptions if we want to come out with conclusions. Now, how do we solve this problem? One solution is to bring all this data together and use tools that can accept any data formats or data languages, as I like to call it. Tools like Hadoop, Splunk, or Elasticsearch are some kind of generic data lake tools that are designed to store logs in unstructured ways. This doesn't require any big investment, any big initial investment, and we can quickly throw into it all the historical logs and data we export from the tools that we currently use, and we're good to go. Now, data lakes have been very popular in the last 5 years because it made it very easy to throw all that data in the store, and we could worry about using it later. Now, while it seems to be a simple solution to manage the data, the problem with it is that it still requires a lot of data science expertise to extract insights from that data. So let's assume Jane from customer service, and she wants to validate her theory. She wants to know if her company's 20% growth in sales is in fact directly related to the hard work that she and her team has put to increase customer satisfaction by 10%. So Jane will start by formulating her question, and she heads to the data scientist with a request. She probably have to wait a couple of weeks because, as you know, the data scientist still has some work to do for the CEO. So that's fine. 2 weeks in, the data scientist will get to the project and will manage to find a way to extract all the relevant data sources from the data lake, and then extract it, transform it into some kind of a SQL-friendly format, and eventually get the data ready for processing. And then finally, after a few hours of slicing and dicing the data scientist will get back to Jane with this awesome, shiny report showing the percentage of sales attributed to customer service. Now, here's the problem. Jane could not get all the credit for her work, so she decides to follow up with another question. And she asks for segmenting that report specifically for new users, or those people who never made a purchase before. And of course, now she has to wait a few more days to get the questions answered. And that's so slow and can completely kill productivity. This actually reminds me of how we used to write code when we first created computers. In the early 50s, software developers used to write code on punch cards. They had to spend their whole day double or even triple checking that every piece of code is punched right into the tape. And by the end of the day, they will take that tape and go to the computer professional who will run it for them in the morning. And that's how they used to test the code. Imagine we still have to do that today. Every time we need to test a piece of code, we have to wait for days to get the results. So instead, now we're able to press one button and get instant results. In fact, even our development tools have evolved so much to a point where it became so smart that we're able to detect those bugs as we are writing the code. Now, this story or that experience is very similar to data today. We spend hours formulating questions and anticipating what follow-up questions we may have to ask, and then wait in line for our data professionals to do all the hard work for us, and that's very slow. Now, at this point, it became very clear that we need to do something about this data and find some kind of a solution to make this data accessible to anyone who has questions. Enter customer intelligence. Now, the way I see customer intelligence is that it's some form of a more specialized data lake So instead of streaming logs into a generic data system, that data lake has to be somehow customer aware. And every piece of information that we throw into it must be attributed to a customer or a visitor. So instead of having an unstructured set of logs for tools, we will have well-structured logs for people. And this is, in a way, very similar to what CRMs do, except that it's designed for behavioral data and massive data sets. Now that all the data is getting cleaned up and streamed into a real-time system, you basically got rid of 90% of what the data scientist spends time on. Then you could couple this tool with some kind of a visual interface where the data schema is well defined into the system, and this would allow visual interactions with the data. You will have this, basically this magical dashboard that can answer any question you have about your customers, and of course, every aspect of your business, not just your customers. This will lead to full autonomy, and employees will finally be able to get their questions answered on the spot without having to wait in line. And this is basically what data democratization is all about. Now, let me go over some of the long-term benefits that we get from centralizing the data. First of all, every employee can now be a data scientist. Of course, you should not expect that every employee will spend their days asking questions and crunching reports, but instead, you're enabling those curious employees who always have the right questions to quickly find answers and use these answers to come up or create follow-up questions. And that's how innovation happens. If your whole team is blocked from the data, except for a few experts, don't expect much to happen. The other benefit is an exciting one, which is data-driven operations. We're finally starting to hear and see a lot about ways we can leverage data to automate processes. Of course, this requires deep understanding on customer needs and bottlenecks, and that's why we need to be data scientists first to understand those challenges. But also having all the data centralized will enable automated repeat use of that data to create personalized experiences and ultimately delight customers. And finally, the benefit that you all are probably looking forward to is deep learning. And I'm actually looking forward to the next talk by Valentin. He will be talking about how AI is going to change e-commerce by 2020. So make sure you stick around for that. Anyway, one of the most important foundations that we need to invest if we want to have a proper machine learning application is creating a cohesive data foundation. Think of well-structured data as like the healthy and organic food that AI needs to perform. And that's unstructured data is like an ice cream in a burrito with French fries. And that's actually like not very healthy for the business, although it does sound good. But anyway, you get the idea. The takeaway here is that it's very simple. What we need to think about today is data strategy. It's not about throwing all the data we have into data lakes and relying down the line on data scientists to do all the work. We could invest as much as we want on data scientists and put patches on the problem. But the real thing that we need to think about is what kind of data strategy we need to have in the company. Do we need to think for the long term? Do we need to create data democratization, boost innovation, leverage machine learning, personalized experiences, etc.? Yeah, you really need to think about how you're going to collect data and store that information. That's the foundation of everything you're going to be doing next. Thank you.
Thanks as well, Elie, for your presentation. I just have to ask you something, because before looking at the questions from the audience, so mainly what you're stating is that we are disconnected, right? So mainly there are lots of departments in any e-commerce website, which, let's say, it's having a decent revenue, right? And a team of more than I don't know, 20, 30 persons. So mainly your tool is addressing an e-commerce website which has enough, has a bigger team, right? Which has a data scientist, and it's also having certain roles in the organization. And what you're stating is that if we drag data and we are just dumping into any kind of tool without having a centralized way of looking at the customer, we are missing the whole point, because the teams are disconnected, not looking at the same thing at the same time. Is that right?
Exactly. We're basically looking at small chunks of the whole customer journey. Think about customer service teams. With customer service, you're probably sitting behind a customer service dashboard, seeing how many tickets you're getting every day and how many of them are successful, and basically what is the satisfaction level that you're getting from responding to those tickets. But you're not able to tie all that information to the whole customer journey. And unfortunately, you see today all these departments, from marketing, growth, customer service, or even product, sitting behind those small siloed dashboards where they're not able to tie all that information together and be able to measure the effect of their work on the bottom line of the business, or how it's affecting ultimately the whole customer experience of the customer. So it's very important to bring all the data together so that we can recreate the whole customer experience in forms of like some sort of a data lake. Instead of looking at tools as being in the center of the insight, you'll be looking at the customer as being at the center of the insight. That will basically empower everybody in the company to measure and visualize the effect of every effort they make on the ultimate customer journey.
Yeah. So one important thing that I must add to your statement here, Elie, even though I totally get it, and I'm on your side with this. I've met a lot of entrepreneurs and big teams that are actually not looking at the customer. So they are like, instead of focusing on their ideal customer and fulfilling the needs, or meeting the needs and desires, or vice versa, if they are selling something on the safety side, making sure that their customers are getting their unique value proposition, they are focusing on metrics and shitty stuff like, I don't know, traffic, likes, or orders, or even important metrics such as customer acquisition cost. These are still shallow. So if you are not looking at the right KPIs, like how do we integrate the net promoter score for the top spenders, like how can we see any correlation between the NPS and the lifetime value? So, or how this campaign affected the revenue, but maybe it decreased the satisfaction, or the new line of products that we've introduced, how the relation from me as an e-commerce website with the customer that I'm having is doing after I'm doing this experiment, or I'm introducing this new line of product. And from what I've seen with even bigger companies, like with e-commerce websites, e-commerce companies that are having more than 300 employees, they are still looking at the wrong KPIs. So mainly they are not having a unified vision, or let's say dashboard, so that they can see the right KPIs and how the relation with their customer is doing. And I hope we will try to use Zupra, and that's a live promise that I'm doing, because I'm having the same problem here. So even though we've aggregated data into some dashboards, and even though we are looking at some metrics, we can't see how the relation between me as a company and my customer, our customers, is doing, because that's the most important thing. And as you've stated, experiences matter, because without experience you don't have any relation. It's like in real life. So if we don't meet each other, if you don't catch up, if you don't know, hey Elie, how's it going, we don't have any relation left. We've just had one experience, I don't know, when we've met in San Francisco 1 year ago. So yeah, that makes total sense. But the problem is the mentality of the CEOs and all those hippos that are staying there and are looking only at numbers without getting the pulse, the real pulse of the company, how the company is doing, how the customers are seeing us.
Well, those CEOs also have access to data scientists, and they're able to get all their requests prioritized. but there's a new generation of CEOs where they look at the problem at a deeper level, and it's not about just getting themselves the answers, but it's all about empowering the teams that they work with to help them become more autonomous and get their questions answered faster, which is all about basically delegating decision making. If the CEO is the only one who's able to get access to this data, that's not very healthy to the business, is it?
Yeah, of course. The problem, what you're stating here is the difference between the pyramidal way of running a business, like hierarchy, you know, always listening and following the leader, instead of a network, you know, instead of having networks of real cool guys which are handling the customer experience, and which are the ones that should decide what to do, and they should be heard before, I don't know, buying a stock. We've heard a funny story I must share with you and with you all. An e-commerce website, a big one from Europe. They were about to finish their experience after a growth like this, because they've decided to acquire a huge stock of 400,000 euros. So they blocked literally their cash into a huge amount of products without asking the product managers. So the CEO made an emotional decision, you know, like, okay, let's buy this. It's so cheap and it's so good. Let's do it. So he was about to ruin the company because of one single bad decision. So I think the future of organizations are with, let's say, a board of people where the person, if you don't have this role, you must invent it, or you must get it, so to get that person which is handling the relation between you as a company and the customer. And with such amazing tools like Upra, you can actually get the data to become data driven, and to also monitor, not only measure, like we are doing now, Elie, what we are doing in our companies, we are making snapshots, you know, we are looking, oh, what's happening now, and then after 2-3 months, we're, oh, let's look again, you know. So we don't have a way to monitor all these great real KPIs that can help us all. But it all starts with the mentality of the company, because we are now meeting, we have a board of decision makers which are meeting, and mainly we are fighting so that we decide where should we go together. Not I'm the only one that is deciding. And this is a cultural shift that is painful for me as a CEO, but it's great. So it's like the burden is not on my shoulders, only on my shoulders anymore. And I think this has to do with the maturity level of companies. I'm sure that the bigger the company, the easier for you to introduce your way of thinking, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we noticed actually that with larger companies, it's even a bigger problem. And of course, larger companies tend to use a lot more tools, and there's a lot more hierarchy in teams, and departments are literally separated in different buildings. So it takes a lot more time to solve this problem for a larger company. And that's why small to medium-sized businesses should take advantage of the fact that they are smaller teams and they are not dealing with lots and lots of technical debt. This will allow them to quickly act on this problem and solve it, and basically have an advantage over those large companies that have a lot of bureaucracy and slow, changing pace at their companies.
Cool. So we have two questions from the audience. One of them is coming from Tao. Experience is a big word for me. I often do not know what experience I should give my customer. So my question is, what experience will be the trend in the next 2 years that you can predict? Or better, give me an example from an industry that you are the best in.
That's a hard question. I mean, I'm not the most expert on customer experiences in e-commerce, but the simple answer to that, like, you need to give a good experience. It's not like you need to stop thinking about ways to hack growth and investing time on tools that will basically help you generate a quick buck, you need to start thinking of long-term strategies. For us at Whoopra, for example, one of the experience that we're trying to promote is putting the customer experience first in a way where we want to create as many promoters as possible. For instance, Valentin, when you want to sign up to Whoopra and use the service, our priority is not to get you to pay Whoopra. Our priority is to get you to become a promoter of Whoopra and go around and tell your whole network that Whoopra is the best tool to use for whatever you're trying to accomplish.
So you succeeded. I'm actually promoting it before properly using it. Yeah,
it's not always the case. We're lucky with this one, but usually, as you know, creating a more, giving a user a good experience and valuing them in a way where they will go out and promote the product for you is ultimately the best go-to-market or marketing strategy a company can get. Of course, you need to couple that with a great product so that people will love it and start suggesting it. But instead of spending so much time on gimmicks and hacking ways, and a lot of people don't agree with me. They always want to find ways to optimize things, and that's not always wrong. But for me, as a CEO, when I look at the big picture, I like to think about experiences as creating some wowing experience for the customer where they will literally go out and go tell friends or people in their network, like, this is a great tool, you need to use this tool. So the strategy of creating a good experience is all about creating more promoters or people who will go and promote and evangelize your business versus finding shortcuts in the product that you have to quickly generate money and scheme customers.
Okay, that makes sense. We have a question from Elle. So for companies who agree with you and want to democratize their data, how big of an undertaking is this? Have you seen transitioning away from data lakes will take weeks, months, or years? So how long?
Can you repeat the question again?
So for the companies that are jumping in, so mainly they want to get rid of data lakes, how much it takes for them to, from day one when they've decided and they are onboarded, till they actually start using the data and not only installing I think that's the question, not only integrating the data, but properly using it and getting to deciding their strategy according to the data from tools such as Whoopra?
Yeah, good question. So basically, what we saw, the biggest challenge initially for people to move away from data lakes into customer intelligence is that it was so hard to basically program all that data to be transformed in the right way into this customer intelligence platform. Because, you know, this requires an initial investment where people need to basically translate all the data from all the tools they use into one common data language. And there used to be a big investment that needs to be done on that front. Now, the good news is that with tools like Whoopra and Segment, it became a lot easier to have you know, some kind of pre-built integrations with all these services. If you look at simply the concept of webhooks, it wasn't really popular before 2013, but since 2013, almost every product that ships is offering a webhook API with their system. So now you could simply plug those webhooks into your customer intelligence service and start collecting all the data in real time, which made it a lot easier for us to quickly adopt customer intelligence and go from there. Now, how quickly do we get results from customer intelligence? I think, I mean, you know, as soon as you start getting the data flowing and making this data accessible to the teams, this is when anyone in the company can start asking questions, and they will get those questions answered literally in seconds instead of having to wait for weeks. And you could think about just this scenario, how much value it can bring to the company and how much innovation it can, how fast the innovation can happen at that company when you have every person in the company accessing all that data in real time with the right interactive data tools.
Okay. I also have a question, a prospect question. So mainly it's after I'm plugging in my data in Nupra from various things like, I don't know, Intercom, whatever, you name it, from everywhere, our CRM, our databases, everything, like literally connecting everything up over there. Am I able to cross data and to do some calculated metrics from various data sources? So not only exposing data, but manipulating in a way such as, I don't know, to see some calculated metrics from Google Analytics and Intercom. So after I'm matching things regarding the customers to see how these KPIs are doing in time.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the first thing that you could think about is that in analytics, or when you're dealing with companies' data, there are different layers that you could apply to any kind of reporting you want to accomplish. At the highest level, you have the concept of segmentation, like being able to define audiences based on who they are and what they do. For instance, the example that I gave earlier in the presentation about Jane, who had to follow up on the report that the data scientist on the report that the data scientist has shared with her. The first follow-up question she had was, okay, how can we apply the same exact report just on those people who have never made a purchase from us before? So being able to quickly build those audiences will allow you to basically create a smarter report, dive deeper into those reports. And those audiences can be created based on any kind of interaction across any tool that you are pushing into the system. So let's say you're using Intercom and you're doing some advertising at the top of the funnel, and you have some kind of cart abandonment tool on the website. You could now ask questions like, first of all, you could take this audience who came from a particular email campaign and then say, I want those specifically who only made a purchase for the first time today, who never made a purchase before. So now you're bringing the cart data and checkout data. And then you want to add to that and have asked or have submitted at least one ticket in the last 7 days. Now being able to ask this question and bringing all these tools and channels together to identify an audience that you will be able to run a report on is a major part of basically diving deeper into the data. And then the next phase is basically identifying the dimensions, metrics, or the metrics that you want to study. So on one hand, if you are in customer success, you may want to study the flow from when someone someone's ticket gets answered successfully, how often do you see a sales happening from those specific people within the next 24 hours? So now you'll be able to ask and answer questions across multiple tools rather than looking at 2 different charts and trying to make assumptions to find correlations around that data.
Okay, so what's next in your roadmap? Where are you going? So mainly what you're saying is that you've managed to grab all this data intelligence from all the tools, and you are able to answer to any questions. So are you going further than that? So mainly what I'm thinking right now, so can you be able to ask questions like, what's the most important factor that affected the retention rate for the highest paying customers in my e-commerce? Can you do that?
So now you have all the tools where if you ask the right questions, you will get quick results. You will know that this has gone right or this has gone bad. I think the next step for us is to basically help you identify what are the right questions to ask. I think ultimately over the next 3 years, what we want to do is really have this data assistant in the company where anybody will be able to ask it questions, whether it's in some kind of a natural language or not. But basically, the idea is to have this one source of truth in the company that can be leveraged by everybody to validate any assumptions. And then, of course, over the timeline of the next 3 years, we're going to have a lot of tools that will help you ask the right question, and it will basically proactively tell you that there are things that you need to worry about, and there are things that you need to look for. It's not about just asking the right questions. But believe it or not, even like with maybe 80 to 90% of companies I talk to, they still find it challenging to simply even get those questions answered in the first place. So there's a lot to be done. Democratizing data in companies is not an easy problem. And we've gone a long way over the last couple of years with Wupra launching App Connect and making it easy for customers to install apps to integrate all that data together in a click without having to involve engineers. But the next step is basically to take all this data and empower it with data-driven operations. We've launched, for instance, at Wupra, the ability to trigger actions whenever someone joins an audience. So we need to be a little bit more, leverage more predictive tools to help those businesses identify problems ahead of time and act on them in an automated manner without having to involve people and engineers to get these problems solved. So this is the long-term vision and mission of Wupra, starting with getting the data in the hand of every employee who's curious in the business. And then the second phase is to empower everybody to run experiments and leverage machine learning to automate experiences and create something that is that used to basically create an experience in minutes that used to take us years to implement and put together.
Cool. So, Elie, we don't have any other questions. Thanks a lot for your time and your valuable insights. I've actually learned more about how can I do. I've actually had some ideas, and for sure you've onboarded me somehow. So let's keep in touch. Thanks a lot again, guys. We are gonna see each other in 13 minutes, I think. I'm gonna talk to you about how the artificial intelligence is gonna affect the e-commerce landscape till 2020. Until then, enjoy your coffee and grab some beer or soda or whatever you can, depending on your time zone. So keep in touch. Thanks a lot, Elie, and all the best.
Thank you. Looking forward to your talk as well.